What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stucky.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by NBA futures analyst and generational hater Brandon Anderson for this edition of your NBA division previews. Today we'll do the Northwest Division. That's the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Denver Nuggets, the Utah Jazz, and the Portland Trail Blazers. We'll give you best bets, angles. We'll talk about these teams in depth, and we'll give you some bettable angles for how to look at their season win totals, division odds, and more. Reminder, everything we talk about can be found in the award-winning Action Network app. You can find more content at youtube.com/the Action Network. Let's get right into it. Brandon, we're going to start with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, I was all in on them last year. That came through for us. I bet them in season for the division. That came through for me. Lots of opportunity. I think I bet them for number one seed also, like mid-season. The one that didn't get home for me was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for MVP. We will follow the same format we did for the Central Division. Let's start with our 10 words. What's your 10 words for the Oklahoma City Thunder, as well as your bet, lean, or pass?
More downside than it seems, both ends, not Boston West. So I am under 56.5 lean here. You got me on OKC last year. I was not in on them. You did talk me into getting a Shea position on my MVP, which I think was the right position, but you were there. I'm there now. The win total's gone up a lot. I'm just still leaning under on the very high number.
I will counter with my 10 words. The best team in regular season basketball. It's a 3-unit over 55.5 play I've already put in. And I will also put in a bet on a best bet for plus 165 for the Oklahoma City Thunder to be the 1 seed in the Western Conference. Okay. To set the stage here, 56.1 wins. There are 56.5s in the market. You can still get 55.5 as we record this on August 12th. It's moving up, though. It's already moved up about a half a win. This came out at a very soft number for the division. There was a plus 140 for the division on like the opening night of free agency, when it was very apparent that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was not returning to the Nuggets, and they'd already traded for Caruso, and they had a meeting with Hartenstein. So I went ahead and bet that. Plus 100s of the division. Seeding is over under 2.5 in the Western Conference, plus 115 to the over, minus 140 to the under, plus 165 to be the 1 seed in the West, as I mentioned, and most wins overall is plus 380. Okay, Brandon. So I think we should go ahead and get into what we like and don't like. So let's start with a positive. What do you like about this team?
Yeah, I mean, they're running back the 1 seed, and they had a top 4 offense and a top 5 defense last year. They added to that 2 elite role players. Swap out Giddey for Caruso. You overpaid, but you brought in Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, there's a lot to like there. Caruso, stud defender. I certainly like personally that it might make Lou Dort a little more movable or play a little bit less. I like that better for the playoffs, certainly for them. I'm leaning in right there. Isaiah Hartenstein, top 10 center last year, I thought. I had him second team all defense for my ballot. So you're adding 2 hyper elite defenders to a defense that was already really good. Chet was phenomenal. Chet is everything I hoped he might have been, way sooner than I could have imagined. I had him top 3 on my defensive player of the year. He would have been my rookie of the year all but 3 years this century. Well, all but 4, because he happened to be in the victory year. Otherwise, like, he was like a generational rookie year, and granted, like a sophomore year. He got the extra year in there with the injury year. But I thought Chet changed everything on both ends of the court. His spacing on offense, his rim protection on defense. Additionally, I'm not sure the team is necessarily done. They have, I mentioned the Hartenstein contract. They got him for just under $30 million. That's too much, but it is a tradable contract, I think. And they've got that. They've got Dort for 17, Aaron Wiggins for 10, I think is a nice movable contract. Kenrich Williams for 7. They've got differently sized movable contracts that I think they did on purpose because I think they can package those plus picks. They have picks from Clippers, Heat, Rockets, Jazz, Mavs, Sixers, and Nuggets. They own futures from all of those teams. That's a quarter of the league. They've got routes to fix problems, even if they have them in the season. I think they need J-Dub to take the next step. I personally think he might be the next trade piece for the megastar that I think the team still needs to get where they want to go. But there's a lot to like here. Obviously, Shea is every bit as good as you hyped him last year. The defense has been great, especially under Daggs. And even though I'm under, I can't go too hard on it because there just are a lot of ways where this goes well. Shea stays healthy, plays like he played at times last year all season. Chet takes another step. J-Dub takes another step. The defense is like Timberwolves level defense from last year. The youth improves. They make a trade. There's a lot of positive paths here. Last year I was down on them and I missed it. And I think the main thing I missed is I missed the many positive paths. I saw what they were, but I didn't account for how many different things could hit. Presti has set this up magnificently. There's certainly a lot to like here.
So the two things I think you want when you're building a roster for the regular season, that's entirely different from the playoffs, but we're talking regular season here, is you want versatility for you to be able to match whatever it is that you need to match in game, and you want redundancy in the case of injury so that you can get by if you've got enough. And this team has the most of both. They have the most of both. The lineup possibilities here are just pretty much endless with the additions of Caruso and Hartenstein. Like, there's just no end to it. So you're facing a big team like the Lakers that killed them last year, and you're going to get killed in the offensive glass. Well, how about you add Isaiah Hartenstein, one of the best rebounders in the league, and you can play him next to Chet, and you got a Twin Towers combo. Yep, that will work. You can do Shea, Caruso, J-Dub, Chet, and Hartenstein. You can do Shea, Case, and Wallace for shooting Caruso, Jalen, and Chet. You can add in Isaiah Joe. You can throw in Dort. There's an infinite number of combos here. And if somebody needs to miss time, they can replace almost anybody except for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. If you say but Chet Holmgren's so important. He is, and he's awesome. But if he needs to miss a game, they're going to be okay because you're still going to be able to run spread pick and roll with Shea and Hartenstein and then shooters around them with J-Dub as a secondary creator. There is just an infinite amount here. This team is one of the best coached in the league. That's why he was able to win Coach of the Year last year. Like, Mark Dagnall was able to win Coach of the Year last year. They shot out of their minds because the offense is so well built. I'm an EPM guy. And so if you're going to add 2 of the top 10 players in EPM, yeah, probably my projection is going to be pretty outrageous. I've had to drag this thing down to get it to somewhere reasonable because of how good this team is. Look, they were, me, and I care about half court. That's what I care about is how do you perform in the half court? Because that's more sustainable. Teams can do their part to contain transition. Don't turn the ball over, get back, and you can contain transition offense. Not always, but for the most part, you can at least make an impact there. This team was second in half-court offense and defense with the youngest roster in the league. We look at the offseason additions, look at the lineup versatility, and then consider, Brandon, they're also young. They're only going to get better. I don't gush over teams like this. I don't do this. I'm well, it's really hard. And, there's always this, that, and the other. And no, man, this team fucking rocks. They're so good in every facet. And they should be better next season. There are things I can look at as this might trip them up. But that's the thing. Most teams, in order to hit the over, have to be all right, if this happens, and if this happens, and if this happens, you're good. And with the Thunder, in order for them to go under, Brandon, even with the 55.5, I legitimately think you have to build a bunch of ifs for them to go under. That's how good they are. Tell me what you don't like about the Thunder.
It's less that I don't like. It's more things that I don't necessarily love or just they're not even red flags. There's some orange flags here, but there are a number of them. I think rebounding is still a really big issue on both ends. Obviously, Hartenstein should help with that, but I think Hartenstein helping with that also moves Chet off the 5 for any of those minutes, and I thought Chet at the 5 was really the key thing that unlocked everything I loved about the team last year. So I think moving him away from that could potentially hurt the offense, spacing, and maybe even the defense. We'll see about that. I don't know that I love the Hartenstein fit. Like, you don't just get to add a great defensive player to a different team and it all just, like, defense not additive. So I'm a little concerned there. They are coming off a very healthy year overall. I think there's a good chance for regression there. They are coming off an incredible outlier shooting season, number 1 in 3-point percentage. If you look up and down the roster, like, every dude basically had an outlier positive season now. They also have a guy named Chip England. So maybe there is no shot regression looming. We did Fred Vincent on the last podcast. I got to tell you, man, I don't know a lot of shot doctors. I only know 2. I know Fred Vincent and Chip England. You got one of those guys, I assume you're going to make a bunch of shots. So maybe they're just going to keep hitting everything. And you're going to say, well, the offense is giving those good shots. They're getting better shots. And I agree. Like, that's part of it as well. I don't think they're going to crash, but I think there's some regression. I'm a little worried actually too about just how much the offense is on Shai. I agree. He is the guy. He is the MVP on this team that cannot go from their roster. He's coming off the most games of his career and now an Olympic run. He's the offense. He is the entire offense. Like, you're right that he has to be that. He has to be that for this team to make their offense go. But I know you're EPM, I'm BPM. Looking just like at stretches during the season, I thought, without really looking, I thought Shai's one of his biggest value is his consistency. Like, we know if you played props, he scored 31 points on the nose like 7,000 times last year. Like, insane how consistently he scored. But if you look at the advanced number by BPM, for a stretch, he was 11 or 12. That is win the MVP. Another stretch, he was around 8 or 9. That is basically where he ended up. That is beyond the MVP ballot. Around the holidays, he's around 6 to 7. That's good. That's like Donovan Mitchell good. That's like Tyrese Halliburton good. That's not the way we talk about Shai. Late in the season, he was around 2 to 4 BPM. Those are big swings for a guy that is the star, that is the entire offense, and who I think probably plays 5 or 10 less games this year just based on the career averages. And we talked about Josh Giddey on the last podcast. Josh Giddey is not the right fit for where this team was going. I think Josh Giddey did give them a stable floor. When Shai wasn't there, I think Giddey was the guy who could step in and stabilize things enough. He could ramp up a little bit. He's the Russell Westbrook for what this team was. That has some value. If we get less Shai or worse Shai, they don't have a break glass in case of emergency option. That's what Giddey could be for them. That's not what Alex Caruso is going to do. So I think the offense has a little more downside that way. I think the defense has more downside than it seems just because I'm not positive I can figure out how Hartenstein fits everything. I still like them. They're my 1 seed. I have them at 54 wins. I just have that under the number, and I have 2 teams at 53. I think there's, to me, you had to get to lots of ifs to get under. The number is high. Like, we know when teams' numbers are high, you should lean under. I just think that a lot still has to go right to get to the over. I like a lot going right for them. I think that they have a very high floor and they're going to win a lot of games. They just got to win a lot of games to get to the over.
Okay, so a couple of things. One, Shai's offensive rating with Chet Holmgren on the floor was 123. It was 121 and a half when Chet was off the floor. They really, like, Shai cooked with whoever was on the court. Hartenstein's not a negative offensively. He was 87th percentile in offensive EPM. He's a great passer, finishes great at the rim, on top of the offensive rebounding. Like, he's not Rudy Gobert. He's not going to space the floor. I just think that if you kind of look at, you can move Chet pretty reasonably to a floor spacer position and run 1-5 and be okay. There's also a lot of value, honestly, to run and pick and pop with Chet, with Isaiah under the basket as in the dunker spot for the lob. Like, there are actually, to me, more ways to it. Like, there's more stuff you can do. You're not just running 1-5 spread. that to me is better for OKC because it gives you more options. And one of the nice things about Hartenstein is that, yes, they gave him a lot of money. He is not a player that it's like, hey, we need to change up the lineup tonight because of who we're facing. He's not going to be like, blah, 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 I'm a blah, blah, blah. He's going to be like, cool, no problem. I'll be back in the starting lineup tomorrow. It's fine. And that,
let me just go count my $28 million for why I'm sitting on the bench tonight.
And that optionality is so valuable. Yeah. They're 19th in location EFG, 3rd in actual. So you mentioned Boston. Boston was 18th and 1st in location versus actual. So like they really do kind of profile very similar, where it's a lot of wings, they shoot a lot of threes, and they have central components that kind of drive things. The Thunder being a lot more driven by Shea's engine than the Celtics are by Tatum. They were one of the healthiest teams last season. I've kind of commented on this. There is not a significant trend that says that. I mentioned this with if you have a lot of injuries, the same is actually true if you were really healthy. Like I thought, like, oh, surely there's a little bit of pullback. There's it's like 48% to the under, or to the over. So like 52% to the under the following season if you're in the top percentile of health. They were one of the healthiest teams in the league last season. They also got a bunch of young guys and they got a great training staff, and certainly like health can derail this very quickly because of the number. You're absolutely right on that. Like any bad luck on the injury front, and it's gonna be rough. You mentioned Shea's gonna dip. I do want to note what happened there was they were rolling. They basically secured a top 3 seed in early March. And then what happened, because the Clippers fell off, and then what happened was they went on a long East Coast road trip, and it was very apparent that Shea was struggling. The rules changes also kicked in there, and that did bring Shea down. Everyone, like Dallas fans in particular, were like, he's just a South foul grifter, which, by the way, Kettle and Pot there on calling him black. But Shea actually did adjust as the season went on to how the rules were officiated. But he got hit with the rule changes, an East Coast road trip when they locked, not number 1, but they were at top 3, and then he got hurt. And that was why that dip occurred. And once they got past that, it just ticked right on up towards the end of the season.
And I would add too that the good, the BPMs, the really positives, he was that in the playoffs. Like when it got to the games that mattered again, he was right back there. So late season trend doesn't matter if you're going to do it when it matters.
You mentioned the high number. If you're just like, I want to fade the Thunder, I don't think that they're as good as their record was last year. I don't agree, but I completely understand that perspective, and I will give you the reasons why here. Win totals above 52.5 are 28 and 15 to the under in the past 13 seasons. However, this is the caveat there. Teams that finish both top 5 in offense and defense with a win total over 52.5, there hasn't been that many of them. Only 6. I know that's surprising, but it's true. 4 and 2 to the over. So actually the teams that were legitimately that good, if you were that good on both offense and defense, it is right that your number should be that high. Win totals above 55 though, overall 18 and 10 to the under, that's 65%. Teams with a negative differential between how many they should have won and how many they actually did. So if you didn't win as many games as you should have, you actually should have been better. With a win total above 52.5, makes sense, right? Like, oh, you should have been even better last year. Yeah, 10 and 6 to the under. This doesn't work out very much if you have a win total over 52.5. And if you win fewer, if your win total is fewer than your previous wins, which this is, like the Thunder 157 and it's a 55.5, and you didn't win as many as you should, I wanted to look at that as like, you should have won more. And yet the win total went down from how many you actually won. 16 and 10 to the under. So like there's all these kind of reasons to go ahead and go under here. Where do you have them projected for offense and defense?
Yeah, I have them at 8th on offense, 5th on defense. I think you're going to push back on that. I think you're going to have them a little higher offensively. I've got them like 4 to 12 range. I know that sounds like a big range, but you know, we don't know where these things go. I have a net +5, so that gets them to 54 wins, 51 to 57 range. It's certainly good. One more thing that I'm a little concerned on, and I think that's going to have to win me over a little bit. To me, because the offense is the part I'm a little bit more concerned about, and because of my concern of Shea, it's so much being on Shea, I think the immediate future of the team, and I think the playoff immediate future of the team, depends on J-Dub. And I'm not quite there yet where it seems like others are on J-Dub. I like him, but I feel like people talk about him as like this, like one of the top young players in the league. They talk about him as an elite shooter. He's 43% on threes. He only shot 3.5 a game. You're not an elite shooter if you only shoot 3.5 a game. And I think we saw that in the playoffs. Like I'm screaming for the dude, like take more shots, put your imprint on the game. If you're the star second young offensive player, I don't know that he's quite there yet. I need more J-Dub in this offense. And he certainly could. Like that could be a very easy reason why I'm wrong and why they go over this is he just takes another step. Like I think he's good. I like him. We know where I'm at. I think I'm about to mention. I think J-Dub is kind of their Jaylen Brown on this team. I think that's where this could end up heading. And I feel like the perception, because he's on a great team with a great defense and great teammates, I think the perception is out ahead of where he's at. So it's the offense 8th is why I'm a little bit concerned. That said, I do my like similarity scores here. Here's some teams that they grade out similar to. Denver last year, the Bucks the previous year, or the Sixers, 2022 Grizzlies when they had Ja healthy that year, 2021 Suns and Bucks. That's the finals that year. This is an A+ formula. You want that list of teams to be the teams you're comparing yourself to. I like them. I just don't want 56.5. And there's more things I'm concerned about than that I love about them. But I'm excited to see where they go.
The key with Jaylen is that his average is going to be lower because his peaks are the thing. Is like when he has good games, he has loud, great games. And that's where that hype comes from. And there's a lot of games where he was phenomenal and was the reason they won. I also just think he's going to be better because, like, again, they're so young. Like, he's going to keep improving, and that's, to me, is very important with this equation. So, 60 plus games is plus 210. The number 1 seed is plus 165. Help me with this.
So I don't think I like the 60 plus wins because of this reason. And we're early on this. This is our first West team we're talking about. So let's not get too into the weeds on specific other teams. I mentioned I have OKC 54. I have 2 teams at 53. I'm not even going to name them yet. I don't think they need to get to 60 wins. I think if they're good enough to go over here, I think they clear the West. And then who needs win 58 or 59 or 60? Maybe you're trying to pass Boston at the end so that you could get home court in a finals. But I don't know, like, I don't think you can bet based on that. So I don't know that I want those extra wins. You might need to get to 57 to get the 1 seed. I have them winning the 1 seed by 1 win, the way my projections go. You need every win there. I don't think I need 58, 59, 60. I don't think there are other West teams pushing them, similar as I don't think there is in the East either. So I don't know that you need to get to the really lofty number. I don't think I like the 60. I think I'd rather do the 1 seed. What do you think about that?
I think I agree with you. I think I'm probably going to bet both. So that's how that goes.
And you're not throwing. You gave me a lot of trends of all the trends I knew were coming about the high numbers and taking the under. You set them all, and you're just betting against it. You just don't care.
Because of the fact that they were the top 5 in both, that they were so good.
Yeah, that's a good
the
one.
Exception here is when the market is like building it on superstar power and wins the previous season, and you don't dive into like how but they, if a team was like, yeah, but they were 12th in defense, like those differences really matter when you're trying to get up there. And honestly, a good model for this is like you and I. One of our strongest plays last year was Boston. That was the highest number on the board, and you and I were still like, nope, don't care, going for it. So, I'm in on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Let's talk Blazers because I know that this is your best bet for the division. Give me your 10 words on the Portland Trailblazers.
The only definite tank team in a loaded West. They're not good. The West is good. I'm under 22.5. This is actually my only bet on this particular podcast. I think the division is well priced. I think Portland is not. I think Portland is going to lose a lot of games.
Okay, I am with you. Mine is, there is absolutely no reason to bet the over. Under 22.5, it's a 3-unit play for me. So set the stage here. 22.1 is where the win total is currently at. That's pretty freaking low. Little to no movement. There hasn't been a lot of movement on this line yet. Division.
Can you explain real quick when you say 22.1? There's not a 22.1 line out there. Can you explain to a listener where you're getting a number like that?
I took the average of 5 books that are in the market, including our show sponsor BetMGM, And
Okay.
so it's the average of where
And
that
you're
number.
averaging in the juice a little bit as well, yeah?
Yes, exactly. Yep. Division is 60,000 plus 60,000. So, if you want to take the division, get for a home run. Playoffs, yes, playoffs plus 3,000, minus 20,000, no. Seeding is 14.5, minus 250 to the over, plus 200 to the under. Play in is 18-1. Everything in this is telling you the Blazers absolutely suck ass. Tell me about the big picture perspective on the Portland Trailblazers, and tell me what you like about this team.
Because that's going to be real short, the what we like section. I think if the math is right, I think that's a give the books $1,000 right now to hang on to for 9 months, and then you return 1,005 at the end when they inevitably miss the playoffs. So, maybe find better things to do with your money. Just go put it in a CD or something, but that's definitely cashing for you. They're the only tank team in the West, I think, is the main thing here. Maybe Utah gets there. I think they should get there. I don't think the Spurs are a tank team. We will get to them. Maybe one of the LA teams gets there, or just like somebody who's the star gets injured, like somebody that will happen to. But right now, they're the only team that definitely doesn't want to win and is not built to win in the entire West. That means they don't have to tank. They can just suck. They can just lose games because they're not any good, because every night they're going to be playing a West team that thinks it's good, that's trying to win. And they're probably going to get worse because Jeremy Grant might get traded and DeAndre Ayton might get traded. They're already trying to move those guys. I wouldn't be shocked if they try to trade Anthony Simons at some point. I'm not sure he fits the direction of where the other young stars fit on the team. I love my guy Chauncey Billups on a basketball court with the ball in his hands. I think he's one of the all-time underrated modern guys. How is he still coaching this team? How is he the coach of this team? I don't understand. Like, in the NFL, in certain places and markets, you can bet on first coach fired. Can I bet on first coach fired Chauncey Billups? Why is he on this team? I don't understand. They're going to lose so many games. My Chicago Bulls own a top 14 protected pick over the next 4 years from the Blazers. You're not getting the pick this year. It's not happening. The Blazers stink. Here's what we like. If Time Lord or Donovan Clingan play, they might be not terrible on defense. If Scoot Henderson doesn't suck like last year, he might be less sucky this year. End of list. That's the only stuff I like.
Denny Avdia is a plus player. I don't necessarily love him with this concoction, but his minutes will probably be better than the minutes without him. He was actually, if you're any sort of positive with the Washington Wizards, you deserve a lot of credit. And Denny Avdia was arguably the most impactful player on the Washington Wizards.
You're right. He should have been on my list. I really liked that. He's got a great contract also.
Duop Reith is older. I really like Duop Reith. I went through and watched like 200 possessions from Duop Reith because I'm a sicko, and he's really good. 18-7 per 36, 18.7 rebounds, 46, 36, 74 splits, 55% EFG, 2.1 stocks per game, and is a plus 0.9 offensive EPM. He had 63.
Unfortunately, he's their fourth center.
I know. Well, I don't think so anymore. He played a lot down the stretch. 63, 40, 36 were his splits for at rim. So 63% at the rim, 40% from mid range, was not bad. 36% from three. Scoot figured it out late. I've got it in our rundown of his EPM. He cratered out of the gate, got injured, came back, was better, struggled a little bit, got hurt again, and then came back and was like, oh, like he started to actually make some reads. That the loss was painful for us. I'm not willing to write off Scoot Henderson, though. I think
I agree.
He's going to figure some stuff out. However, he was, first percentile at the rim. He shot 45% at the rim.
Yeah, not good.
27% mid range and 25th percentile from 3-point. He was truly one of the worst players in the league last year. There's just no getting around it. Tamani Camara actually makes winning plays. What I don't like, Anthony Simons is 25, Dwop's 28, so he's ripe for maybe removing him to get him online with the age of the rest of the guys. Tybal's 28, so 3 of their better players are all 25 or older, and that doesn't make sense on this team when they're going to lose as many games as they are. Shaden Sharp's still just 21, but he was 12th percentile at the rim, 11th percentile from mid range, and 30th from 3. Like, Shaden's not really good at anything yet, and that's a real problem when he's an important part of your team. Simons was 12th percentile at the rim. Now,
Yeah.
Simons could shoot. That's what he does. And I think he's able to be a passable engine for a bad team, which is kind of what you saw last year. Like, he'll have some really big games as the primary engine. I think he's better suited as a number 2 off-ball shooting guard weapon. There's a reason why so many people want him on the Magic. I don't love that fit. I think he's not good enough for what the Magic need. But as primary engine and best player, this is disastrous. Simons is just simply not good enough. He doesn't make it. His impact is not good enough to make the rest of the team better. If their guys don't make big leaps, or if Klingon doesn't pop immediately, they're in a. You mentioned this with Chauncey. It's a lame duck year for Chauncey. Last year of his contract. They're not being subtle here. Like, they're gonna lose. They're gonna lose a lot of games, and then they're gonna fire Chauncey or let him walk, hire a new coach, and hopefully have Cooper Flagg or one of the other awesome guys, because it's not a one-person draft. Yeah. There's a lot of guys that are great at the top of this draft. They are going to lose as many games as possible, and this is the biggest thing for me. If you're going to lose games, if you're going to try and tank this year, you got to be in the teens. You've got to be in the teens if you're going to have any shot at Flagg, because Brooklyn is not going to win 20 plus. So if you want to get Flagg, you need to be at minimum. You have to lose enough for you to wind up with 17 wins. Like, that's just what you're going to have to do. I think that's where you're going to have to be for the number 1 seed, or for the number 1 lottery spot. So that's where I'm at on this. What don't you like about the Blazers?
I actually disagree with that because the odds now for the lottery are flat at the bottom or top, or however you want to see it, where you just need to get into the bottom 4. So for me, I think you get like under 25. I think you're going to get into that top 4 equal odds at the top pick. I don't disagree about Brooklyn in particular. I don't have, like, Portland is one of 3 abject, terrible teams. So
you don't want to. My counter would be, you don't want to risk it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I understand. I guess the reason I say that is because I truly think Portland goes easily under this number without tanking. I think that's how bad that they are. So what don't I like is actually what do I like for most teams, which is normally I look at the roster here and I'm like, oh, well, Scoot was hurt. You're going to get 500 more Scoot minutes. Well, Simons was hurt. You're probably going to get like 20 more games from Simons. Shaden was hurt. You're going to get like 1,200 more minutes from Shaden. Yeah, don't want more minutes from those guys. Those guys aren't good. More minutes from those guys makes me worse. Shaden, not good. Scoot, not good. Scoot's going to be better. Shaden's going to be better. I'm not ruling them out long term. I think Scoot will definitely be better. I agree with what you said down the stretch. He's still going to be a positive player. Most young point guards at his age are not positive players. So, you know my thing, if you're going to give the ball in the hands of young guys who are not very good yet, your offense is going to be pretty bad. They're going to get more Scoot and more Shaden. That's going to make their offense worse, not better. That's unfortunately how this goes. If in case those guys get hurt, don't worry. They signed Devontae Graham. They'll still suck. They can put whoever they want in there. They got plenty of tanking bad options there. The defense, I think, will still be terrible. They've got Klingon now. They've got options. But again, more Scoot, more Simons, more Shaden. These are not good defenders. You're adding bad defensive minutes into your lineup. They were 23rd last year, not terrible. They're going to be worse. They're bottom 4 defensive 4 years in a row before that. I have them bottom 4 offense and bottom 4 defense. I have them net -9. That is a 17-win team. I have them at 13 to 22 wins. The entire range is below the 22.5. So I don't even really think I need them to tank. I think that they will eventually anyways. I don't even think that's that interesting. I just think they're not going to win games. So it's an under 22.5 for me.
I have them projected for 18 wins. I will absolutely want worst record when that pops. That's not in the market yet, but for worst record, I will want the Portland Trailblazers. 19 and a half.
How are you going to project that market? Is like Brooklyn, Washington, Portland? Is that the order, the top 3?
Yes.
Yeah, I would have wanted Portland. Well, I got Washington projected at 9 games. Spoiler alert. So maybe I'll just take Washington on that one. But I wouldn't mind Portland. They're my number 2 right now.
An under of 19.5 alt line in the market is plus 165. So if you're a little with me and you think that they're gonna win fewer than 20, that's where that is. So yeah, we are fading the Portland Trailblazers. The Denver Nuggets, after a disappointing end of their season in Game 7, blowing a 20-point lead to your Minnesota Timberwolves. What is your 10 words on the Nuggets and your bet lean or pass?
Red flags galore. Last dance for this Coors window. I am under 52.5 on just a lean because Nikola Jokic and Michael Malone scare the living crap out of me.
Yeah, mine is if I could fade Jokic, I would, but I can't. I have a strong lean to the under. Average line on this one is 51.9, down about a win from the open. There were 53s that first popped when this came out. 52.5 is where it mostly is. Now there's some 51.5 starting to populate in the market. Divisions plus 245, 55 plus wins is plus 200 if you want to go the other way. Seeding is 3.5. That is minus 135 to the over, plus 110 to the under, which I find I like that. The over on that one, minus 135. One seed, if you want to go the opposite route, is plus 400. Still a lot of confidence in this team in the market. Where do you want to start on this one? Do you want to give the big picture?
I do want to do the big picture because I think that actually plays a lot into how I'm thinking about them here, where I actually think like the immediate big picture is KCP is gone. How do they replace KCP? I'm actually much less worried about that, I think, than you are, and I think than a lot of Denver folks are. Look, I know the numbers about the 5-man lineups. I know how good they've been with their 5 guys on the court. I know all of that. Individually, I don't think KCP is a huge loss. I think Christian Brown can do a lot of what he did. I don't think that that's a big letdown. Like the whole point of having Jokic be awesome is not paying KCP and finding a different version of that if you need to. I think the big picture, though, like the big zoomed out picture, is really bad. This is not your defending champs anymore. Bruce Brown gone. Now it's Christian Brown. You switch Browns, you got a worse Brown. Jeff Green, not there. Now it's basically Peyton Watson instead. KCP is Julian Strother now. So those are the guys. Like that's your 4, 5, 6 really potentially until the new veterans step up. Deron Holmes, they really liked him, out for this season. I thought he was going to play kind of an important rotation role for them. They got Zeke Naji doing nothing for $8 million a year. They got DeAndre Jordan. I don't even know if he's around. Like Deron Holmes was supposed to play. Jalen Pickett was supposed to play. He was terrible at Summer League. Like, he is not going to play useful minutes for them. Their big moves are Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric. That's the moves. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing for Nikola Jokic, generational player, defending 4-time MVP in my books. That's the guys we're giving him to play with. Jokic just had a whole Olympic run after a long season, after a long postseason. Jamal Murray, same thing. Jamal Murray did not look good at the Olympics. Jamal Murray looked very, very scary to me at the Olympics. He looked a lot like what we saw in the playoffs, which he was my LVP in the playoffs. I know he hit 2 game winner jumpers, but the metrics were real bad, and I think he hurt the team. I think he cost them a finals berth. So that's where the big picture thing comes to me is Jamal Murray is on the last year of his deal. Aaron Gordon is on the last year of his deal with the player option that he's not going to pick up because he's worth more than what he's getting paid. So I mentioned Last Dance in my intro. There's always whispers about Michael Malone. God knows why. The man has gone over every single season. He's an NBA champion. I don't understand, but the whispers don't go away. There's whispers about Jamal Murray. KCP's gone. The Cronkies don't pay. So if you are already at the second apron almost, you're going to get more expensive. These guys are not going any cheaper. You're already skimping out by not paying KCP and not paying Bruce Brown. I think there's a lot that could go wrong here. There's just also Nikola Jokic, so maybe nothing else matters, which is kind of what your thesis was. But like, I really, really like Jokic, and I still really want to lean under on this. I still want to bet the under, and my numbers tell me I probably should. There's a lot of stuff that could go wrong. I'm curious what you think about any of that. Like, that's not even inside for me. I got no insider info. You're the Nuggets guy. Am I reading too much into the big picture stuff? I feel like there's a lot that could not go well for this team.
No, you're not. So what's interesting is it's kind of a telling that when teams return the same starting 5, there's this belief that the chemistry won't change. It's like, well, they were great last year, so they'll just be good this year. That's not how chemistry works, guys. It's very ephemeral. And do you know what the biggest cause of chemistry changes in the NBA is? It's money. That's the biggest cause of chemistry changes. In 2023, the Nuggets had everyone locked up. Everyone had multiple years left on their deal. Money was not a problem for them. No one had to worry about their contract. Jamal was in an extension year last year, got banged up, and then had a miserable end to his season, and is clearly pretty cantankerous about it. And as you said, looked terrible in the summer. That team was frustrated and tired at the end of last season. They were exhausted, and they were really tired from having to keep up. They were simultaneously trying to push to the end to get the 1 seed because they didn't want to let it go. Even though the coaching staff had kind of indicated we should, the players wanted to compete. But they needed to rest because they were exhausted. That was why they lost to the Wolves. Is like they ran out of gas in Game 7. It's very evident when you go back and watch that game. You mentioned this. Michael Malone's never gone under with Denver on the win total. Not once. The only time he would have would have been 2020. They were on track to before COVID happened. And so like it's entirely possible that they still would have found a way to go over that season. They have an uncanny ability to win versus historical markers. So like point differential should be like the clearest indication of how good you are. I looked this up. They have outperformed their expected wins in 6 out of the last 7 years. They don't win blowouts. They win by a comfortable, they don't win blowouts and they don't win like just a bunch of 3-point games. They win like 7-10. They were tied with the Clippers amongst playoff teams for the fewest 10-point wins last season. They just kind of win, and it's never too impressive or too unimpressive. It's just solid. They're very Spurs-like. I like Peyton Watson's upside. I think Peyton Watson is going to be a better player long-term than Christian Brown. Russ is a wild card for sure, and there's a lot of ways it's bad, and I don't think he's playoff viable. There are some things he's going to do that I think that they need. I think they need somebody to come in and really go at Jamal Murray's throat in practice and push him and be a fiery guy. Jokic wanted to play with Russ. That's why he's there, is Jokic wanted him. And if Jokic wants him, I have to kind of defer to the 3-time MVP and believe that he's going to get the best out of him. And I think that there are ways it can work. They found ways last season to balance the offense and defense. The upside of that is that the defense was finally really good. It was top 10. The downside is that the offense grades out really great, but it wasn't the peak of what it was in 2023. They didn't have nights where you were just like, oh my God, this offense is so awesome and perfect. They were just like really awesome. And that was enough to get them to 57 wins, tied a franchise record, Game 7 of the second round versus the Wolves. That's pretty good. So it's hard to argue against them. When you dig further into this stuff, you find, as you mentioned, you find more concerns. I don't know what's going to happen with Jamal's contract. I really don't. I would expect them to give him the max. Usually the player gets what he wants in these cases. If he doesn't, there's going to be acrimony and they'll still have him locked up for like the next 3 years. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. Are you going to try and get the last 2 years non-guaranteed and then just have a pissed off Jamal Murray? There's no good answer here for Denver.
I mean, I think he's a max player. Do you think he's a max player? You probably shouldn't answer that question. We'll just go with my opinion on this one. I think Jamal Murray should be on the max.
No, I can answer it. I'm just thinking. I think he is by the standards of the NBA, yeah. I think that by the standards of how people think of it, when they're like, a max player is like the best player on the team or one of the best players.
He's not that. Well, he's not on this team.
He's never been.
I think related to the contract thing, too, I think the Michael Porter Jr. contract is a real problem for the team because if I'm the agent for either Jamal Murray or Aaron Gordon, my guy better be making more money than MPJ next year because I'm more important to this team than what that guy is on this team. And that contract is already too high for a guy who I think is not maximized because I think I want MPJ. I think he's a good player, but I want him at the 4. I want his shooting. I want his rebounding at the 4. I would want to trade for him as another team. If they're kind of itching to get off his money, and I know like the back and injury and all that is complicated, all the teams that wanted Lowry, I would want to trade with not Danny Ainge and get MPJ for like a third of the price and get a different, like a lesser version. I think he's a luxury for this team that they can't afford, that they're showing they can't afford. But I think his contract is going to destroy negotiations for AG and for Jamal because of that. I think it's a real problem.
I have a lot of worries about KCP being replaced by Christian Brown. I do not like this. A lot of this is that Christian Brown's net rating looks really good next to Nikola because Christian was first reserve off the bench. And so what happened was Christian played the rest of the first and third quarters when Jamal Murray went to the bench because Jamal would stagger in the non-Jokic minutes, which meant that Christian got to play with Jokic versus other non-starter minutes. That's like the perfect place to be. You're not playing against the opponent's best 5, and you're playing next to Nikola.
Well, what do you think your on-off would be if you were playing with Nikola Jokic against bench defenses?
Minus 1,700. Minus 1,700. If Emmanuel Mudiay can't get positive with Yoke, I can't get anything there either. Yoke and CB were plus 7.5, which the front office kind of touted, but Yoke and KCP were plus 10. Like, KCP knows how to come off of a DHO and pull up at the free throw line for a jumper. He knows how to make reads quickly. Christian oftentimes gets himself into situations where he is midair trying to figure out what he's doing offensively. Unless that all clicks together for him now, this month, I have real concerns about the dip in the offensive rating for the starting unit, which is one of their best strengths because the bench is always going to be bad for a number of reasons. Russ is still a negative player a lot of nights. They were 24-6 versus the East. That's the best in the West. That's how they got to 57 wins. They beat up on the Eastern Conference. And that's probably going to happen again this year, but it's just something to kind of note. Their offensive ceiling, like I mentioned, slid last year, and there's no changes to the staff. They haven't changed anything up. There is tension with the front office and the coaching staff. The coaching staff doesn't want all these young guys. The front office said, this is where we're at with the apron. This is where we're at. We're not going to the second apron for KCP. You're going to have to make it work. And has positioned it to where there are a bunch of thorny situations here for Michael Malone to kind of navigate. And Malone is a stubborn, angry, like he's got a big ego, like a lot of coaches do. This can get really tough. So yeah, there's a lot of, I agree with you on the flags, which is why for me, it's a no play.
Yeah, couple other numbers. Defense, they leapt to 8th in defensive rating. They leapt to number 3 in defensive EFG. I don't know if I put that under like or dislike. I don't know if I believe this is the number 3 defensive EFG team. Like that doesn't check out. That doesn't pass the smell test to me. So, like I do think that the bench unit looked worse than we thought last year because I think they leaned into defense a little bit more maybe, and that evened things out. But if that regresses a little bit, that's another thing where they can drop a little offense. They were dead last in 3-point attempts last year in the NBA. They were second to last in free throw attempts. You got to make some easy stuff sometimes. Like I know Jokic makes easy stuff by just giving you layups, but like it's not modern. Like you said, they haven't switched it up necessarily. I thought Murray had his best regular season last year, but then it's been a while since then. He hasn't been good since then. Jokic is off a long season. I think even missing like 5 or 10 games more is a significant drop off for this team. So if you said all the things I said and had all my numbers I said, this would be like an under bet, definitely one of my top plays, but it's Michael Malone 8-0 to the over. It's Jokic. I had the number 2 about like they always go over their expected wins. I just think that's Jokic. I'll give Malone some credit too. It is weird. Their offensive rating, I have them at 7th this year, 7th offense, 15th on defense. Their offense is ranked 5th to 7th in 6 straight seasons. So even like the really, really good years, there still are like, we missed some games or the bench wasn't good enough or whatever. Like they're always really good, but they've never quite been super elite, which matters for regular season wins. Similar teams, I have them similar to Denver the last 3 years, but a little worse. I have them similar to Dallas or Philly this year, but a little worse. That's a little worse of what is usually not a winning playoff formula. So I don't know, man. I'm worried if it wasn't for Jokic and the gospel of Jokic that I and you both subscribe to, like I think I'd be looking correctly at play-in odds or missed playoff odds. I think that's what I should be looking at. I just don't think I can do it because I believe in Jokic that much. But like, put it this way. What if Joke plays 60 games? How far does the bottom? How far does the floor fall out? And is that an angle that we should consider playing? I hope he plays. I want to see him play all the games.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing: is the trick with Yoke is he always plays. He's one of the most durable superstars that we've ever seen. And so you can go one of 2 ways with that. You can be like, everybody eventually gets hurt and misses games, and he's played a lot of basketball. Like this guy is gassed. I looked it up.
High level basketball.
He is tied with Jason Tatum since 2019 for the most games played, and Yoke has played more international competitions, and that's before making jokes about the summer. Yoke's just he's had to play, and they both played not just a ton of games, but they went through that COVID stretch where it was bubble, month off, full season, playoff run, short off season, and all these playoff runs on top of it. And he's older than Tatum. So it's eventually, yeah, like I think he's started to get tired last season. I think he's reaching that point in his career, which that to me dictates that they're going to have to rest him more. But I don't know if they can because of how good the West is. Again, I don't think that we're in agreement here, and we're spending a lot of time on it. There's just no reason to play it because it is. I thought I projected them for 49 wins based off of their performance the year before last season, and they won 57. Like, there's just no reason to really get into this. If things go sideways, we will have bets to make out of that. There will be angles because Denver's out. But for right now, I just think that we got to call it a no play and move on.
I think for me, where I landed is I'm going to go under Denver, under OKC. I'll lean on both, and I'm going to play both of them, not like as a parlay. I'm just going to play both because I think that my worst case scenario is splitting them and just drinking the juice on it, which is not great. But I think that there's a good chance that I hit both the unders here.
Well, let's talk about that because if you're down on OKC and you're down on Denver, guess what that means as we talk about your Minnesota Timberwolves. Give me your 10 words on the Minnesota Timberwolves.
You're going to roll your eyes at me. Was last year as good as it gets for this core? Under 52.5, pass.
I should absolutely like them more than I do, are my 10 words.
Interesting.
Lean over, pass. 52.5, this one has not moved. Zero movement on the Wolves. They opened at 52.5. They have stayed there. Divisions plus 245. Interestingly, they are same as the Denver Nuggets for their division price. That's very telling to me. Seeding is 3.5 minus 105 to the under, minus 115 to the over. One seed is plus 380 and plus 390 if you want to go the other way and bet they land in the play-in tournament. Give me the big picture on the Wolves.
Yeah, they're running it back. They got the top 7 minutes are back. They are bringing back the number one defensive team, a regular season floor formula that worked. They made the Western Conference Finals, one of the greatest seasons in franchise history. They replaced 8 through 13 in minutes with what they hope are better offensive guys rather than defense to try to even things out a little bit this year. We'll talk about that. I'm not sure how successful that's going to be. They are real expensive. I think they're at $205 million. That is way over the second apron. 96% of the cap to Ant, Rudy, and Cat. Just that. So obviously, like, they're way over 100%, but that's the point. Add in the weird ownership thing that, like, won't go away. If this team doesn't make the finals, I feel like they're going to have to do something here. Like, this is a really expensive team. And last year was better than expectation. They played with house money. I think the pressure is on now with the weird ownership thing and with how expensive the team is. And Mike Conley, he's older. He's got 2 years on the contract, but he's fading. He can't do his stuff forever. Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid are on player options after this season. This might be the year. You're going to have to make a decision on those big guys. And do we do the 2 or the 3 or where are we going with this? I think this is a big year for them. They're all in on the core. They don't have any picks for a long time. This is the team. I kind of like your thesis. I feel like I should like this formula, but something just smells a little off to me. What do you like about them here?
Their top 8 were all 62nd percentile or better in defensive EPM. When you have Rudy Gobert and you surround him with pretty much anybody that can capably guard, you're going to have a top 5 defense. And I'll get to this later. Top 5 defenses go over. They just go over.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a top 5 now every time for a top 5 offense, top 5 defenses go over. It just happens. And after making the playoffs and Team USA, like, he could make a real leap here. He already made a leap last season, I think, but he can make a real jump in terms of understanding how to influence the game. He got an up close and personal look at LeBron and how he plays. He's going to get to see that. He played Jokic and saw how he dictated things. He should be better this year. He is entering his prime, and there's so much hype for him for a reason. So Ant making a jump into real MVP conversation, if he winds up top 5 in that category, that's going to raise the ceiling quite a bit for them. They've got a lot of shot location upside. They were 22nd in 3-point rate, but 14th in 3-pointers made. And they were 3rd in 3-point percentage. So they hit the threes that they took. If they just take more threes, they could be in a lot better space offensively, which I think would help them this season. Moving Kyle Anderson, I think, honestly helps them in that regard. I think moving Kyle Anderson gets you in a little bit more of a simplified. Kyle's got a very sophisticated, very specific kind of game, and this will change that, I think, a little bit. Naz Reid. I'm so glad he won 6th Man of the Year. He was the most impactful guy. That bench unit, even with the change to a rookie point guard coming off the bench, should still be very awesome. So yeah, I think there's a lot to like about the Wolves. They're still going to be really, really good if everybody's healthy. If everybody's healthy, they're going to be really, really good. That's where I start to have worries.
Yeah, Chris Finch, you didn't mention. I know you love him. I love him. Great coach. The defense formula looks great. Number 1 EFG defensively. Number 1 turnovers also, which that's not a normal combination. Normally, if you are number 1 in turnovers, that's kind of a sign of maybe a fake defense a little bit. But if you can force that many turnovers and still be that good defensively, number 1 in 2-point percent defense, they're not allowing a lot of threes. Like, this is an ironclad profile. This was not just a number 1 defense. This was the number 1 defense. Like, this was a historically great defense. Now that means you're probably going to regress a little bit. You can only really go down from there. I do think they will drop a little bit. They opted for offense. They replaced Kyle Anderson with Joe Ingles. That's a defensive downgrade. They replaced guys like the point guards. They've got Dillingham now. That's a defensive downgrade and kind of a big one, I think, actually. So
a huge one. Yeah,
that's gonna impact. Like, they got to play him. And I actually think, like, not even a commentary on Dillingham as a long-term player. I think that's going to make their defense and their offense worse. You know how I feel about playing like a 19-year-old point guard real minutes. That's not McLaughlin and Monty and running like competent offense there. So those things, like the defense has to come down a little bit. So even I still have them projected as number 1 defense. It's just not last year's number 1 defense. That's still a downgrade there. And obviously, like, the upside is there with Ant. If you get the version that shows up night after night in the playoffs, then that's why I'm a pass on this team. Because even though I'm under, he could just obliterate. And, like, I think the perception of Ant is ahead of where he actually is playing night to night so far.
I agree.
He made All NBA last year. I would have not had that. I had him 5th team All NBA on my rankings. He's going to get there. He's going to get there for sure. He's improving. Everything is going well. But you needed the night to night thing. Like, we talk about, like, superstars got to bring it every single game. He might do it. Like, I normally love the post-Olympic jump thing, and I think he's a great candidate for that. So that's what I like. What I don't like on the team, you mentioned the health. They had pretty good health last year, and they had a lot of peak years from guys. That's why I kind of wonder if this was maybe the best shot here. This might sound crazy. I kind of think Mike Conley might have been the second best player on the team last year, second most important player on the team. He's 37 this season. Rudy's 32. These guys can't do the thing forever. Like, you got to age out. Not everyone gets to be LeBron. So that's going the wrong direction. I think the team has figured out the Cat Rudy thing as well as they can. I still also think neither of those guys is really optimized. Rudy's offensive impact, the numbers, the advanced metrics are down since Utah. Cat, same thing. The offensive metrics have never really bounced back. Like, his rebounds are down, his assists are down, the turnovers haven't gone down. I don't know that that's necessarily working, and the decision is looming there. I don't know. They just the Dillingham thing does concern me a little bit. I think Terrence Shannon is maybe a little more ready to help, but this team definitely chose to sacrifice some defense for offense, and I don't know. I don't know that I agree with that formula. I think stick with what you're really good at. I don't really want you to be like the number 4 defense, but improve 5 spots in the offensive rankings. I think you're worse overall. I'd rather you do the defensive thing, stick with the identity, and run it back and do it again. I think they tried to kind of have their cake and eat it too. And I'm worried that the Dillingham move in particular kind of might stick them in the middle a little bit.
I think part of the idea is that, look, if you don't have Rudy or Mike in the playoffs, you're screwed anyway. So you might as well improve on having the tools that you need to make a playoff run and beat the teams in front of you, because you got past everybody except Dallas. You ran into the one bad matchup. And so if you add a little bit more offense, maybe you can counter that, right? I think it's not a bad idea. It does have impacts, though, on our regular season projection, because going with like stick with what brung you, that's going to get you to, that's what Utah did. Like that's going to get you to 50 plus wins every single year. You're going to be a top 3 seed, but it also caps your ability to win in the playoffs. Like that's kind of the question I think you have to face.
It is, but like you did that. You traded for Gobert. Like you literally traded for the guy that you just said in your example. So I think you've made your bet on it already.
The health stuff is just, look, if Conley's out, their offense and defense are going to crater because they're replacing him with a minus defender, and Mike's the one that makes the offense go. If Gobert's out, the defense is going to fall off a cliff because even though Nas and Cat were really good defensively last year, there's no replacing Rudy. He's still just so freaking impactful. Like I think there's been a wild, like Rudy's career has been wild. He was underrated when he was young, and then he was overrated when in his like coming up years 25 to 30 with Utah, and he's been underrated the last 2 seasons where he's a one-man top 5 defense. If not one man, you have to have capable stuff around him. And if you put good defenders like Minnesota has, you get what you got last year, which is an elite unit. I have a bunch of numbers here that kind of talk about this. So if you got a top 5 defense and an offense outside the top 10, which is what the Wolves had last year, you're 16-11 to the under. So a little bit of an edge to the under. However, if they're top 5 again in defense, it's 5-3 to the over. The more important number here is that if you're a top 5 defense, 43-17-1 to the over.
Wow.
Period, end dot. If you're a top, if you feel a team is going to be a top 5 defense, you need to bet their win total over. Top 5 defense, not top 10 offenses overall, are 21-13-1 to the over, 60% in that season. So again, you don't need a great offense with these. I wanted to take out the teams that were elite on both sides of the ball, is why I pulled that. And so yeah, like teams that were top 5 last season and top 5 this season are still 15-9 to the over. The reason I bring that up is the market can adjust for you being really good last year, and if you're top 5 on defense, you go over anyway.
Yeah.
So again, if you think the Wolves are going to be top 5 in defense, this is an overplay for you. That's why I should like them more. But I am worried about the health. I am worried about things falling apart. I am worried about potential changes. I am worried about chemistry. I am worried about all these types of things. I will probably play an alt on them because I do have them. Look, I dropped them by a half point in power rating, and I still have them projected for 57 wins.
Oh,
so like
wow.
I'm going to play like a small play at 55 plus, but nothing significant on them. And I'm going to call it good.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I want to know if you feel like look, on draft night we talked about the Dillingham thing. You know, I didn't like the trade for Dillingham. This is not about that. I want to know if you think I'm overrating the Dillingham thing because my concern is they've got to play him. Like they tried to bring in Tyus when he was available. They didn't get him. There's not another option here. Like he's the backup point guard, and they went out and got him. The goal has to be to take your growing pains in the regular season because you got to play this dude in the playoffs. We need his offense in the playoffs to get us where we want to go. That's the message that they sent this year. So you've got to take your lumps during the regular season. You got to play him. You got to give him the ball. You got to give him backup point guard minutes. And I think he's the starter probably if Conley misses some time, unless you just make Ant the point guard and play like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Well, that's good, but now the bench just took a hit. So I don't know. I struggle with that a little bit. I disagree with what you said about if you think they're top 5, you got to play the over. I think for me, I think they are top 5 defense, so I'm a pass. I think I would be an under and a play, but because I agree that the defense is the high enough floor, look, I'm fading all the top 3 teams in this division. I'm not playing a division bet. I'm fading all of them a little bit. This is the one I'm not playing. This is a straight pass for me. I leaned on the other 2. The elite defense, I think that makes this one a little safer. But do you have any thoughts on the Dillingham thing? Am I making too much of that?
Yeah, I think you're giving him too much of a downgrade here. I think you're thinking that he's going to look, and he'll probably be a negative number by BPM and EPM. The numbers that you and I trust the most, he's probably going to be a negative because like most players, it's hard to be an impact player in the NBA, especially as a rookie. It's very difficult to do that. But is he going to help? That's very possible. He might be unplayable on the defensive end. He might be Bones Highland, but they're like the hype on him was there for a reason, and he is a bucket getter. And there is an entirely possibility that just like him and Nas just like run up and down the floor, make plays. Nickeil plays a little bit of defense, and that's enough to get him like to help with the bench minutes. And they had a really good bench last year. I will also say that even though you're like, you got to play him now because like this is your window. Like Tim Connelly never thinks of things like that. That's just not how he views them. Like he drafted Rob Dillingham because he believes in his long-term future. And that's almost like independent of where they're at this season. And so I don't think it's like, if they have to address that in season, I think they will. And that's kind of thing is if you go out and you get a Jordan McLaughlin replacement and then Dillingham's replacing Monte Morris, that's fine. Like that's the equation that you kind of got to get to here.
But they didn't though. But you're saying they can't.
Yeah.
Is PJ Dozier that for you?
Yes.
Okay.
They probably believe PJ Dozier is that. Let's wrap up with the Utah Jazz, and this one will be real quick because I don't have a lot of interest in this team. Give me 10 words on the Utah.
You don't have to tank if you're just bad anyway. Over 29.5, but pass.
Okay. Stuck in the middle with Ainge. That's mine. No bet. I'm going to pass on this. 28.8. It's down about a third of a win since the open. So there was some 29s in the market, and it's down to 28.5 for the most part. Play-in tournament is plus 10,000. Division 60,000. Yeah, tell me about the big picture stuff with this team and the picks and the money and everything.
Yeah, so they owe their draft pick outright. It is top 10 protected, and next year would be top 8, and then it goes away after that. So the whole conversation with the Jazz is they got to tank. We got to have the Jazz tank. They got to protect this pick. Top 10 protected by my standings means you have to get to like 37 wins to be above that. That is a far cry from the win total here. I'm not really sure that they need to really work to keep the pick. They do need to work to try to get into the Cooper Flag lottery discussion. You're going to have to lose games, but we'll get to this. I don't think they're bad enough to be able to do that. I think the offense is actually like kind of good. And I think that they're going to be good enough early that they're in a different universe than Portland or Washington or Brooklyn. This is an actual basketball team that has actual good basketball players. They're going to do stuff some nights. They now have Lauri Markkanen for the season. They signed him very purposefully the day after the day that he would have had to be signed to be able to be traded this season. He can't be traded now. It's done. He literally, legally cannot be moved. He's on the team. Lowry plus Colin Sexton, who I think is kind of good now. Nobody told me what happened. I did not see that when I got to the numbers. Plus Will Hardy, plus Danny Ainge. They're like too good to tank. They're just still not actually good either. What do you like about the Jazz?
When Lowry plays, they went on a 33-win pace last year. That's not great, but it's pretty good. They had the 9th best opponent expected field goal percentage and the 8th ranked actual. That's wild. 2.3% differential. Like teams shot the lights out versus them. Now a lot of that's like they don't have good closeouts, and teams find consistently rhythm shots even if they're not the highest location shots. But they probably were not as bad defensively as they looked on paper. If they trade Clarkson, which I think is pretty likely, that's going to get them a boost alone. He was 14th percentile defensively in DEPM. Jordan was really like Jordan. I think Clarkson can help a team. Clarkson's a player that I think when you're bad, he's bad because he knows the situation. Like Jordan Clarkson is planned to be a 12-year vet in the NBA. And that means that sometimes you make business decisions. Kyle Kuzma understands what I'm talking about. Keontae George might make a real leap. I loved what I saw from him. There are flashes. The numbers aren't going to stick out on the page, but I really kind of like what that looks like. I still believe in Will Hardy to a certain degree, although I'm getting a little bit concerned. So that kind of wraps up what I like about them. I don't dislike a ton about them. I just don't love a lot about them.
Colin Sexton made a big playmaking leap last year. I've never been a Sexton guy. I thought he was like a bad version of a sixth man. He's good. Like he had it for the season at 3.8 offensive BPM. From January forward, he was like 3.5 BPM the whole rest of the season, counting the bad defense. He's still really bad on defense. He's a pretty good player. You got Lowry, however we're deciding to say. You got Markkanen and Sexton out there. Like, I think actually they're like a top half of the league, maybe fringe top 10 offense when they're trying early in the season. I think they're going to be in that range. There's a lot of offense here. I agree. Too much Clarkson, and in my notes, too much Clarkson Jr., which is what Keontae George is currently right now. I like him, but I don't think he's ready. He did a lot more down the stretch for them, and that was why they tanked. He had a 100 offensive rating, 128 defensive rating with a -5 BPM, so he was worse doing more. I had Clarkson on my worst team All-NBA among starters. Not a guy I've ever enjoyed. Cody Williams I liked in the draft, but he is not ready. I think they're going to have to play him. Isaiah Collier, Taylor Hendricks. There's like a lot of young dudes that I can kind of like, but they're not ready and they're not gonna be good. So I guess I switched over to the what I don't like there. You got something to say about one of my guys there?
Oh, I just wanted to kind of comment that Sexton and Laurie, I just looked it up. They had a 123 offensive rating.
Yeah.
With the both of them on the floor.
Yeah, you're not getting the number one Cooper Flag odds when you got Sexton and Lowry like as your two main guys on offense. I'm sorry, it's not happening. I think defensively is like you said plus 10,000 odds for play-in as you were reading off of the numbers, and I was like, well, like what if? I don't know. The West is too deep. There's too many teams. If it was the East, I'd be looking, but it wouldn't be 10,000. The problem is the defense. The defense is terrible under Hardy consistently. Defensive rebounding is really bad. They don't force turnovers. The EFG is bad. Walker Kessler is like the only real positive, but I don't really understand what happened with him. He kind of fell out of favor a little bit. They were dead last year defensively. That's part of the tank. They're 23rd the year before. A lot of young guys, like trading Clarkson would help, but now you're just going to play more young guys in his place. I have them projected as the number 17 offense. That's pretty good for like a tanky sort of team. I have them 29th on defense. So that still gives you a net minus 4.5, 29 wins. So even 29 wins, by the way I've got it, gives them the number 5 pick, gives them the number 5 odds in the draft. Like, I don't think this team can't fall underneath Washington or Portland or Brooklyn or, don't tell Matt Moore, Detroit Pistons. They're not going to be worse than those teams. They can't. They're too talented. I don't know, like that. My similarity scores for them made them like the Blazers a couple years ago or the Pacers a couple years before that. They're teams that are like solid offense and tanked late, but actually ended up winning like 30, 32 games because they were like good enough offensively that they accidentally won some games early. That's kind of just what we've seen with the Jazz the last few years. So I think they're just like an annoying team that's going to accidentally win some games early. They're going to annoy people like me. They're like, no, trade Lowry and tank. Try to go get the lottery odds. What are you doing? Like that's just not what they're doing. I think they're just going to be kind of bad and win like low 30s games.
They can't trade Lowry because of when they signed him.
Right.
So that's out.
So I realize. I'm saying like the offseason version of me.
Yeah, I'm just saying it for the audience. But the other key here is that also means that they don't have to play Lowry because Lowry's not going to be like, you have to play me so I can increase my contract value. Yeah. He could be like, if they tell him like, hey, it's March, you're done. Cool. See you next season. No problem. Sure. No worries. Like I lean under. I just think that they're probably going to get in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes because if you got Flag and Markkanen, now you've really got something going. It's a development season. You know, they'll probably trade Sexton and Clarkson, and they might trade Kessler because he has fallen out of favor with the coaching staff. And so I think it's probably going to be a tank team. I just don't. For me, it's less like I don't hate them enough to be like, yeah, I'm going to go. Yeah, not hate them. I don't have them so lowly projected that I'm like I'm out. Right. And I don't love their upside enough to be in on any sort of alternative. So. Yeah.
And for me, it's more a question of like, I don't know. I don't think they're close enough to tanking for me to go in on the tank side. Like, I think that they'd have to tank to get from like the 8th worst odds to the 6th worst odds or 5th worst or something, which is not quite as incentivized. You mentioned Sexton as a trade target. Like, that's a guy I'd want. That's a guy I'd be keeping my eye out. Like, if he moves mid-season, that's a needle mover for me on like a title picture race. Like I'm in on what Sexton is doing. So if they're not willing to trade, well, they can't trade Lowry anymore. Sexton, they can. That's a guy I'd be wanting to go get, but I don't know. I hope Danny Ainge is sick that day. Maybe someone else will answer the phone.
All right, go over your best bets for the division.
I don't have a lot. I think in my division, this division, I've got just the one best bet is the Portland Trailblazers under 22.5. And then I'll go a double lean on the Thunder and Nuggets under. Thunder 56.5 under, Nuggets 52.5 under, and playing both of those independently, expecting hopefully at least one to hit, probably both.
Again, if you like the under on both of those teams, how do you not like Wolves division?
I do my entire division.
Even if you don't like Minnesota, you like the under on both of those teams more.
You're right, but here's the problem. I you know how I do this. I do all my work before I ever check the odds. I did all my stuff. I got all the percentages. Like the reason is because everything is juiced in the books. And so like the difference of where things go, like I think Minnesota would be the right angle for me if I was doing one of them, but the juice that adds in on them and the fact that I think that the two other teams in the division are dead on arrival, there's just not enough angle. Like it basically, my numbers came out almost exactly the way that the market is priced. So there's just look, I gave out already on our previous podcast a division odds that I have as minus 200 when it's plus 300. That's the sort of odds I'm looking for here. I'm not playing like a plus 15 in my favor.
Okay. I like the over on Oklahoma City Thunder 55.5 plus 165 for them to be the 1 seed. I'm with Brandon on the under on the Portland Trailblazers. That's a 3-unit play for me. And I'm going to take a small chunk on the Wolves 55 plus wins only, not their over, just 55 plus wins at plus 172. That's going to do it for this week's edition of your division previews here on Buckets. Make sure to check out our interviews on the Thunder and Pistons from Wednesday's episode. Next week, we'll be hitting 2 more, so make sure to come back next week. We'll hit the Atlantic and I think the Pacific next week, so that should be a good one. Make sure to follow Brandon in the Action Network app. My thanks to David Payne and Hutton Jackson, our producers. See you next time. Till then, let's get buckets.